There are some truths so ancient, so raw, so terrifyingly pure, that they are whispered only in the silence between worlds. You didn't come across this message by accident. Something in you has always known deep in your bones, beyond language, that you are not like the others. That life has not merely tested you, but targeted you. That you have walked through fire others only read about, and that somehow, for reasons unknown even to you, you were never fully consumed. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's marking. You are marked from birth, and the mark is not on your skin, it's in your frequency. It's in how the shadows watch you. It's in how the air feels different when you enter a room. It's in how even demons keep their distance, not out of fear, but out of knowing. Let's stop pretending. You've always known you were different. You've always felt the weight of something invisible riding your back, pressing into your chest, watching you when no one else was around. You've seen things that others haven't, felt things they couldn't explain. And you've been attacked not just by people, but by energies, by circumstances, by thoughts that didn't feel like your own. There were moments you didn't think you'd make it, nights where you felt like something was feeding off your despair, days where your own mind turned into a battlefield. And yet, you're still here. Why? Have you asked yourself that? Why do you think the darkness didn't win? Because real darkness knows better than to try and devour what it cannot digest. You are not food for it. You are fire. You are the kind of soul that darkness studies, not to destroy, but to understand. Because while most people fear demons, while most people run from shadow, you were born to face it. You were born with the codes that distort illusions. You were born to see through the veil, and not just see through it, but walk beyond it, and return with knowledge others would burn for. Let's talk about that veil. Most people live inside it. They believe what they are told. They accept the programming. They follow the rules of a world built on fear, control, and illusion. But you never fully bought into it. Even when you tried, even when you wanted to fit in, something in you rebelled, silently at first, then violently. And the more you tried to shrink, the more the universe forced you to expand. Every loss, every disappointment, every betrayal, it wasn't punishment. It was activation. Each time something was taken from you, something deeper was revealed within you. And that's the difference. You're not here to survive the world. You're here to recalibrate it. But let's go deeper. Why do you think the attacks on your life were so personal? Why do you think the pain you've known doesn't match the life you've lived on paper? Because demons don't waste time on the average. They don't haunt empty vessels. They're drawn to power, to potential, to those carrying ancient memory. And if you've been targeted, it's because somewhere inside you, you carry a frequency that threatens the existing order. You don't just carry light, you carry dark light, the kind that doesn't just illuminate but restructures, the kind that doesn't just heal, it transforms through destruction. And that's the kind of power even demons respect. Now pause, feel this, not just in your mind but in your body, because your body remembers what your mind was taught to forget. Your body has been a battleground, but it's also a temple. Every scar is scripture, every trauma is a sigil. Every time you were broken, your soul carved something divine into the cracks. And through those cracks, light began to leak, not the blinding light of presence, the light that says, I see you, shadow, and I no longer fear you. That's what makes you untouchable, not because you're invincible, but because you've made peace with what others deny. You've integrated the very thing they run from. And here's the paradox. The more you embrace your shadow, the less power the darkness has over you, because what darkness thrives on is separation. As long as you see your shadow as other, it can manipulate you. But when you welcome it back into the circle, when you hold it without shame, it becomes your weapon. Your shadow becomes your sword. Your fear becomes your compass. Your wounds become your wisdom. And that's the moment everything changes. That's when the demons stop chasing. Not because you've escaped them, but because you've outgrown their vocabulary. Let me ask you something no one else will. What if your entire life was a training ground for spiritual warfare? What if every moment of suffering was not wasted but strategic? What if the things that almost killed you were setting you up to become the very energy that cannot be killed? This isn't fantasy. This is initiation. And you're not at the beginning of it, you're in the thick of it. That's why things feel so intense. That's why the world feels so loud, so fake, so disconnected. Because you're no longer asleep inside the simulation. You're awake inside the architecture of consciousness. And the moment a dark chosen one wakes up, the rules change. You don't just survive attacks, you absorb their energy and alchemize it. You don't just recover from betrayal, you become sovereign through it. You don't just see through illusions, you dismantle them with your presence. And the truth is, you scare the hell out of entities that feed on fear because you've stopped feeding them. You've stopped leaking your energy. You've stopped playing the victim. And in doing so, you've withdrawn from the matrix of control. That's what makes you dangerous, not to the innocent, but to the engineered systems that keep the innocent asleep. Even demons know not to touch a real dark chosen one, because we are not prey. We are not participants in the illusion. We are the glitch in the code, the anomaly in the algorithm, the storm that cannot be predicted. And when we remember fully, we don't just protect ourselves, we redefine what power means for every soul watching.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
There's a reason you've always felt older than your age, heavier than your body, deeper than your words could ever fully express. It's not just because you've been through more than most, though you have. It's because your soul carries blood memory, and blood memory is not metaphor. It's the spiritual DNA passed from ancestor to ancestor, encoded with the wisdom, the wounds, and the war stories of those who came before you. You didn't just inherit your eye color or your laugh, you inherited assignments. And one of those assignments was to awaken now, in this timeline, when the veil is thinning, when the world is screaming, and when demons are at their most desperate. Because you are not just a person. You are a weapon wrapped in flesh, a sacred covenant walking, breathing, remembering. But here's the truth most aren't ready to hear. The war you were born into didn't start here. It started long before your body, long before this planet even. You were a soldier in realms where words didn't exist, where energy was the only language and vibration was law. You were forged in dimensions where light and dark were not enemies, but forces in dynamic tension, each pushing the other toward evolution. You fought in those realms not with swords, but with soul. And when the earth began to fracture under the weight of collective amnesia, you were sent here, not as a savior, not as a martyr, but as a code-bearer, one who could carry ancient keys through the fire of modern chaos. That's why the moment you were born, everything tried to break you. The systems, the families, the environments, the lies, because the world senses what you are before you do. And the moment your frequency begins to rise, the matrix tightens its grip. Not because you're weak, but because you're dangerous to the illusion. You are the memory of truth that cannot be deleted. And when that memory starts to activate, you begin to see the world differently. The masks fall. The games collapse. The energies around people become more visible. You start to hear the unspoken pain in their voices. You see the contracts playing out behind their eyes. And then it hits you, the world isn't what it seems, and never was. This is the awakening of blood memory, and it's not cute. It's brutal. It's isolating. It's destabilizing. And yet, it's necessary. Because until you remember who you are, you'll keep trying to become who you were never meant to be. The world will try to sell you 1,000 identities, but none of them will fit. Because your soul was not made for survival, it was made for sovereignty. And sovereignty doesn't come from peace, it comes from power. Not power over others, but power over your own field, your own mind, your own frequency. And that power only activates when you stop outsourcing your worth and start owning your energy. Let me ask you something that may disturb the slumbering parts of your truth. What if your ancestors didn't pray for your peace, they prayed for your power? What if they bled, wept, and endured not so you could live a safe life, but so you could finish what they began? You are not just healing your lineage, you are the culmination of it. Everything they couldn't say, you're here to scream. Everything they couldn't do, you're here to embody. You are not their echo, you are their evolution. And that's why the demons don't touch you, not the real ones, because they know what's encoded in you. They know you've been trained across lifetimes. They see the spiritual weaponry in your aura, the sigils carved into your energy field, the ancient oaths still glowing in your blood. And they know that if you ever fully remember, if you ever stand in your full force, you won't just defend yourself, you'll dismantle the entire structure they feed on. You don't need to scream. You don't need to prove. Your sovereignty is silent thunder. It speaks in frequency, not in volume. And every step you take in remembrance sends shockwaves through the astral. This is why you've been attacked. Because they tried to stop the awakening before it reached critical mass. And yet, here you are, wiser, sharper, quieter, more dangerous, because now you know. You know your pain wasn't random. Your suffering wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Every betrayal was a sharpening. Every breakdown was a clearing. Every night you thought you wouldn't survive was a test of your throne. And you passed. Not because you didn't fall, but because you kept getting back up. And each time with more clarity, more rage refined into purpose, more grief transmuted into grace. You are not just remembering who you are remembering why you're here. And when you do, the war changes, the battlefield shifts, the demons retreat, because even they know a real dark chosen one doesn't fight for dominance, they fight for alignment. And alignment is the one thing the dark cannot mimic, counterfeit, or corrupt. You've probably noticed it by now. That shift in the air when you walk into a space. That subtle stillness. That way people glance, hesitate, or suddenly get quiet without knowing why. You felt the tension, the intrigue, the magnetism. It's not arrogance, it's energetic command. And it's not something you created. It's something you inherited. Something you earned through lifetimes of spiritual labor, sacrifice, and shadow integration. You don't even need to speak. You don't need to prove. Your field speaks before your mouth does. Your aura arrives before your body enters. You are not just seen, you are felt. And what they feel is truth, depth, power. And it unnerves them because most people have built their lives on pretending. The real chosen ones don't need to announce themselves. They don't need to wear elaborate costumes or shout spiritual jargon. They carry silence like a sword. Their presence is their proof. And it's not about dominating others, it's about being so fully aligned with your essence that everything around you either rises or reveals itself as a lie. This is the hidden power of energetic command. It's not about control, it's about coherence. It's about being so clear in your field that incoherence cannot survive in your presence. Not because you attack it, but because you mirror it. This is why people either love you or fear you. Why they either cling to you or flee from you. Because your presence is like a spiritual MRI. It shows people who they really are without you having to say a word. You've noticed it. People confess things to you they've never told anyone. Others project their unhealed wounds on you without even realizing it. There's no middle ground, and that's because your frequency doesn't allow for masks. You are a reality check wrapped in skin. And when you show up, reality bends not to your ego, but to your alignment. Let me ask you something you may have never dared to consider. What if your presence is your greatest power? Not your intellect, not your achievements, not your aesthetic, but the actual field of energy you carry. What if you've been trained by the universe to master your frequency so deeply that you don't need to fight battles anymore, you simply enter a space and the battle resolves itself? That's the level of command we're talking about. Not dominance, not force, but frequency, leadership. And here's the twist. This level of command only comes after you've faced the parts of yourself that once begged for approval. You've had to let them die. You've had to stop chasing validation, stop performing for love, stop shrinking to fit into containers that were never built to hold you. You've had to stand naked in front of your own shadow and say, I still choose me. That's what gives you this power, not perfection, but integration. You've walked through your own hell and harvested the parts of yourself most people spend their whole lives avoiding. And now, you wear that integration like invisible armor. You don't need to be loud. You are undeniable, and that's why darkness doesn't touch you, because it knows it cannot enter a field that is fully occupied. Demons don't haunt homes that are lived in. And you've moved all the way into your body, into your truth, into your sovereignty. You've claimed every corner of your being. There are no unlocked doors, no hidden rooms, no unowned wounds. That's what makes your energy impenetrable. That's why you're not reactive anymore, because you're not triggered by illusions when you've already faced the truth. You've become the kind of presence that shifts outcomes. That changes conversations. That dissolves manipulation with a single glance. Not because you're trying to, but because your field will not allow the false to survive. You are the embodiment of spiritual gravity. And people feel it, even if they can't explain it. And some will worship you. Others will betray you. But none will forget you, because your frequency leaves fingerprints on reality. That's the thing about real power. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't need an audience. It moves quietly, like an ancient current beneath the surface of the world. And when it moves, everything moves with it. You've tapped into that current. You've become the vessel through which it flows. And now, when you walk into a room, the room remembers who it's supposed to be, because you've remembered who you are. Not a follower, not a victim, not a seeker, but a dark chosen one. And when you embody that fully, the world doesn't just shift, it bows. There comes a moment in the journey when you stop trying to be understood and start embodying what you came here to do. That moment is not loud. It doesn't arrive in applause or validation. It arrives in silence, in solitude, in the sacred stillness where you finally realize you are the storm. Not the chaos, not the noise, but the force that cleanses, that reorders, that shakes the false to its core. You don't just bring change, you are change. And the world, as it stands, cannot contain you, because you are the final frequency before the collapse of systems built on fear, manipulation, and spiritual amnesia. You were never here to be liked. Let's get that straight once and for all. You were never here to conform, to be palatable, to shrink your voice so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You were engineered for disruption. Your soul is not a gentle breeze, it's a tectonic shift. And when you walk into a timeline, that timeline begins to destabilize. Not because you're cruel, but because your presence forces everything out of alignment to either evolve or exit. You are the frequency that ends cycles. You are the storm they can't escape because you are the mirror of everything they've refused to face. This is not ego. This is assignment. And with that assignment comes a brutal, sacred responsibility. You were not just chosen because you're strong. You were chosen because you could carry the grief of generations without turning bitter. Because you could hold the fire of truth without burning everything down. Because you could stand alone in your knowing and still choose love again and again, even when it hurt. That's what makes you a real dark, chosen one. Not your mysticism, not your gifts, but your resilience, your capacity to walk through devastation and still choose to build. Your ability to see the worst in people and still choose not to become it. You must understand something now and let it sink into your bones. The reason the world has tried to silence you, tame you, distract you, is because you are frequency first. You're not just speaking words, you're emitting codes. And those codes carry transformation. They carry memory. They carry collapse. When you speak, when you write, when you simply exist in your truth, you disrupt the subconscious agreements that have kept people asleep for lifetimes. And that disruption can feel like violence to those who have built their safety on lies. That's why they demonize you. That's why they exile you, because you represent the end of the illusion they depend on. But it's too late now. You've seen too much. You've remembered too deeply. You can't go back, and you wouldn't want to, because you're not here to maintain the old, you're here to birth the new. And birthing is messy. It's loud. It's painful. But it's also divine. Your life is a portal. Your voice is a spell. Your choices ripple through timelines. And every time you choose truth, you collapse an entire false structure. Every time you choose alignment over approval, a part of the old grid dies. You're not waiting for the storm, you are the storm. And storms don't ask permission. Let me ask you one final question, one that your soul already knows the answer to. What if your ultimate purpose was never to be undeniable? What if your mission was not to fit in, but to stand so fully in your frequency that others either rise or retreat? What if your presence alone is the prophecy? You are the last frequency before the rebirth, the final vibration before the system resets. You are the living proof that darkness can be sacred, that shadow can be sovereign, that pain can be alchemized into power. You are not here to play small. You are here to unmake what was never real. And that's why even the darkest energies pause when you step forward. Not because you threaten them, but because your presence signals their expiration. They can't touch you because you are no longer playing the game. You are writing a new one. And when you walk, the old world shakes. When you speak, the illusion cracks. When you rise, reality rewrites itself. You are the storm. You are the prophecy. You are the dark, chosen one. And now, they remember.